I like reading those posters on the notice board outside St. Mary's, which are illustrations of the natural world with hymn lyrics interspersed with the pictures. One is Dear Lord and Father of Mankind, and the other is Amazing Grace. I think it's in the latter that the line, Soon the earth shall melt like snow, occurs. This got me thinking of those moments in the Old Testament, and perhaps in Revelations, where God intervenes in the world, where his energy or presence makes an appearance which causes considerable destruction and chaos to the material world. Mountains crumble, the earth shakes, seas rage, and so on. I take this to be what the line about the earth melting refers to, that the created world, on contact with the Creator, would not be able to hold or maintain its foundation or its substance. It would, in effect, melt before the eternal, which inevitably supersedes, envelops, overawes, and renders it incomprehensible and unstable. This I take to be because, relative to the limitlessness of God, the world is insubstantial, unstable, unreliable, ever-changing, liable to fall apart like dust or grass blown by the wind. The finite simply cannot be present at the same time and place as the infinite. This is what I take the idea that no one has ever seen God and lived to be referring to. And I take this to be our predicament as creatures. We struggle to maintain our hold on the eternal, even though it is within us, because to look at it too much causes us to lose ourselves. But to never look at it causes us to suffer because we lack the one thing that can alleviate the weight of our finite existence from us, that weight being the fear of death, the worry of meaninglessness, the one thing that would satiate the hunger that we otherwise project outwards to a world that can't satisfy us, the practice that is perhaps exemplified by Adam and Eve's eating of the apple. On the other hand, this idea of the coexistence or otherwise of the finite and infinite makes me think of the burning bush. In that particular moment and at that particular point, Moses was given the opportunity to see the paradoxical presence of the infinite shining through the finite, but without destroying it. This I take to mean that God is a paradox to the human mind. He is beyond rational comprehension because he can bring his infinite presence into the particular, which, being confined, has neither the physical nor temporal space to include the boundless within it. The universal being expressed through the particular can't make any sort of sense. Either the particular cannot contain the universal, or the universal cannot include the particular without absorbing, erasing it, breaking down its boundaries. But here in the bush, the particular remains within the universal without being erased, even though that isn't what ought to happen. The finite should lose identity and meaning in the presence of the infinite. The fire should consume the bush. Yet God can achieve the impossible in such instances. In fact, that is what he must do in order to approach his creatures. And this perhaps explains why we struggle to know him. If this is all the case, I think the following question is vital to the religious life. Can the finite and the infinite coexist in the same place and moment? How is it that the eternal and the temporal relate to one another? I take Christ to be that crux point between the material and the spiritual. Being entirely God and entirely human, Christ is the burning bush in human form. Neither side of his nature is erased by the other. In some way that I haven't fully understood yet, it is this salvific gift that he offers to the believer. This relationship with God that doesn't destroy the individual, but on the contrary brings him to full life, because it is a life that cannot be limited. This is why you are asked to surrender everything, and yet in doing so you not only receive eternal life, but win back everything you were willing to sacrifice, perhaps somewhat like Jacob winning back Isaac the moment he was willing to sacrifice him. I see us as creatures existing mainly within the finite, temporal, material, created world, even while having the infinite, eternal, spiritual source hidden within us, which we ignore most of the time. This is the soul, the indwelling Christ, an inner light, the kingdom of heaven within, that part of us that is the image of God, etc. It is this inner space in which we can find a door to the eternal, the door at which Christ knocks, but that we must open. When I take communion, I tend to focus on Christ on the cross, which, to be honest, I often find hard to understand. I tend to consider the idea that when he died on the cross saying, "It is done," that at that very moment something of eternal significance happened. When I contemplate that very moment, I imagine the eternal offer of forgiveness stretching out from the cross throughout time, into the future for all time, but also back into the past. I don't know if it is theologically appropriate to do this, or if I'm stumbling into heresy. I take this moment to mean that all struggle and suffering and anger and resentment, all negativity, all sin is forgiven right then. Everyone is reconciled to God and to everyone else. Darkness is erased from existence entirely. Everyone is relieved of the weight of sin. Everything is made clean. All is forgiven. At that moment, we are all reconciled to and reunited with God. And given that it is a moment that stretches beyond itself, is not contained, but goes infinitely in all directions to all places and times, it is a moment that happened just then, but also in happening, also happened eternally everywhere and at every time all at once. Christ on the cross is at the center of all existence, and his death ripples outwards to the edges, impacting on every single being in every particular time and place. If that is the case, then you can imagine that impact as an eternally outstretched hand, reaching from the eternal through every moment to every individual who has ever existed and will ever exist, offering love and forgiveness. The hand of God is forever offering itself to us creatures, because being an eternal moment, it immediately shines through every single particular moment, just as the light of the fire of God shines through the bush. Christ as fire relates to us as burning bush, just as the vine relates to its branches. If his death is of eternal significance, then its effect cannot be contained to one particular instance. It must, having happened one time, then have happened instantaneously everywhere forever. That is, it is always happening. Christ is dying on the cross for us right now. We are forgiven right now, if we only realize it. This again is Christ knocking at the door of our heart. He didn't knock once, he is always knocking. If he is always knocking, and we can always, at every moment, turn to that space in our heart and open the door to him, then God is in fact constantly available to us. His face can be seen shining through all things. We are the bush that is constantly burning yet never being consumed. We live in a paradox in which grace is constantly and everywhere present to all of us sinners in this fallen, sorrowful, forgiven, joyful world.